October and November is continuing, although really Socktober can be any time of year because it's always a good time of year to knit a pair of socks, in my humble opinion. Are my opinions really all that humble? But anyway. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carrie. This is where I talk about knitting, my tips, my tricks, my opinions, and my preferences. Today I want to share with you a fun way to start a toe-up sock called a band toe. I think this way of starting a sock is particularly great for DPNs, if you like to knit your socks with DPNs, because you do not have to worry about casting on and joining in the round right away. You can get a nice stable start to your sock before you introduce all your DPNs and start knitting in the round. Also, this toe I think gives a little bit more room at the toe of the sock, which I like personally because I like my toes to have freedom. I like my free toes, and I like my toes to feel like they're not constrained by my sock. So if you want to find out what is a band toe and how you make it, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's knit. As always, just a reminder that down in the description box you will find timestamps to different parts of the video. I always hope that you'll watch through the video at least one time, but sometimes you just need to get to a specific piece of information, so you will find timestamps down below. Also in the description box you will find a list of materials that I feature in today's video, and they will have some affiliate links clearly marked as such. If you click on one of these links, it'll take you to a shopping website, and if you make a purchase, that then helps support my channel because I might earn a small commission. So if you do utilize one of my affiliate links, thank you so much. It is greatly appreciated. And if you're like, no thank you ma'am, I get it, no problem. I'm just so glad you're here watching a video today. So the band toe. This toe I actually first learned how to do from Donna Drakunis in an online class, and I utilized it in a original sock that I made, which I will show you now because I am so proud of it. This is a calf length sock that I designed. The reason I chose the band toe for this was I wanted this sock, this motif of the sock, to go right down the front of the leg, all the way down the foot, and right to the end of the toe. And the way this toe is constructed, I felt like really lent itself for this sort of sock design. So how is this band toe constructed? Well, you actually start by knitting a flat strip of fabric. You cast on a certain number of stitches, utilizing some sort of provisional cast on. And if you just heard provisional cast on and you're like screaming like, no, don't worry. If you can cast on for a toe up sock utilizing Judy's Magic Cast On, a figure eight cast on, or the Turkish twist cast on, you can cast on a provisional cast on for this sock technique. But I'm going to utilize Judy's Magic Cast On. I do have a video where I demonstrate how to do that. Again, I will link that down in the description box. But I really like Judy's Magic Cast On because it gives a very nice, stable cast on to get everything started. And it works well with any type of needle that you utilize. Also, hint, almost any time you're called to do a provisional cast on, you can utilize a Judy's Magic Cast On. Throw that out there. But anyway, you work a narrow strip of fabric in stockinette and you knit the number of rows that are equal to the number of stitches you've been working plus 2. Once you have your strip worked up, you pick up stitches along the side of the fabric, unzip your provisional cast on and pick up those live stitches, and then you pick up stitches along the other edge, and when you're done, you have half of your stitches for your sock casted on, at which point you start shaping the toe by increasing 4 stitches evenly every other round. For today, I am going to show you how this works utilizing DPNs. But if you don't like using DPNs for your sock, it is just as easy to utilize magic loop or 2 circular needles with this construction. And if you do want a specific video where I show you how to do that with some other alternative needle setup, let me know. I'll be happy to make that video. But I wanted to show you how to do this with DPNs because, as I said many times, don't take shots, you'll get drunk. This toe construction really does lend itself to DPNs. Also, normally for this toe construction, I would just use a single color of yarn, but so that you can see very clearly how all of this is constructed, I am going to utilize two contrasting colors today. I'm going to knit the narrow strip, that band that starts the toe, in coral, and then once we're ready to pick up stitches and everything, I will switch to the purple. One of the reasons that I like to utilize Judy's Magic Cast On is it makes figuring out how many stitches to cast on for this toe very simple because you're really casting on two sets of stitches at once. So for the band toe, what you want to do is you want to cast on 25% of your total stitches of your project. Now, if you end up with an uneven number, just round down or round up to the nearest multiple of 4. And when it's time, when you're doing your increases, you can do a couple of additional increases to get up to the stitch count that you need for your project. But it's good to just start with 25% of your stitches. So for my little sample here, I'm going to eventually have 48 stitches all together. So I'm going to cast on 12 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I will count my stitches to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. That backward loop just to lock that over. And I am now all set up to start knitting my narrow strip. So to get started on the strip, I have, basically 12 stitches here. I'm only going to knit the 6 stitches on the top needle to get started because I'm going to be knitting flat. These stitches down here on the bottom needle of my Judy's Magic Cast On, they're just gonna hang out here and chill until it's time to join everything in the round, okay? Now, because I'm doing this with DPNs, if I was working on, say, magic loop or 2 circular needles, I would just pull the needle and let these stitches here hang out on the cable, and it makes a really nice stitch holder for all of this. But I have this on DPNs. One thing I need to be very careful of is that I don't accidentally pull stitches off this bottom DPN as I'm working these stitches up here on the top DPN. So the way that I do that is I make sure that this bottom DPN, those stitches stay nice and center, and I only push the top DPN up to the tip. I mean, it's only 12 stitches. If I drop a stitch, whatever, I can always recast on, but you don't want to have to keep trying to recast on. And I'm going to knit my first row. It's always a little tricky, this first row, if you're utilizing DPNs, because you got that DPN right there. If you really wanted to, you could transfer those stitches onto scrap yarn, but I find it just as easy to let the DPN hang there. There we go. Now, after this, everything's gonna be much easier because there's gonna be more space now between the 2 DPNs. Turn my work, and I'm going to purl back. Notice I didn't slip a stitch, I didn't do any kind of salvage. You don't want to for this technique. And I've now worked 2 rows of my flat narrow strip, okay? So what I'm going to do to figure out how many rows that I need to knit for this is very simple. I'm going to take the number of stitches that I'm working, which is 6, and add 2, which is 8, and that will give me the number of rows that I'm going to work for my little strip. So I'm going to work 8 total rows of stockinette. Something about this, if you know how to knit backwards, this is a really handy time to utilize that skill. It's so few stitches that it's just as easy for me to knit backwards and not have to turn my needles as it is for me to turn the work and knit left to right. If you are interested in teaching yourself how to knit backwards, because it is a useful skill, I am planning on making that video. That is an upcoming video. So if you'd like to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss it when I do get that video together, now would be a good time to do that. So I have knitted 8 rows of knitting, but I want to double check my work. So I'm going to count my rows, but there's something really important to remember with this. A basic rule of thumb in knitting is your cast on row does not count as a row unless otherwise stated. Okay, that is a basic rule of thumb. Unless the pattern says otherwise, you do not count your cast on row as a row of knitting. You do, however, count the stitches on your working needle. So I'm going to count down from the stitches on my needle here. And when I count down, I am not going to count this row of stitches right here because those are my cast on stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so I have 8 rows of knitting plus 1 row of cast on stitches. So I now have my small strip of fabric knitted. I'm now ready to start picking up stitches. So to pick up stitches, I'm actually going to pull out a smaller needle because frankly, I think it's always a little bit easier to pick up stitches with a smaller needle. So you'll notice that when I knitted my strip, I didn't do any kind of slip stitch salvage or anything like that. And that's because I'm going to be picking up most of the stitches along this edge. I have 6 working stitches. I want to pick up 6 stitches along each edge. So I'm going to start joining this into the round so I can start shaping my toe. Again, I'm going to use some contrasting color to do this. So I'm going to just start knitting across my stitches. Now I'm here at the edge. I'm going to take out a smaller needle to do my pickups and then knit in, because then I can just kind of clearly decide where I want to place these pickups, because I'm going to pick up 6 stitches, but I knitted 8 rows, so I'm going to have 8 stitches along the edge that I could pick up into, but that's okay because I don't want to pick up into the stitches that are right next to the needle, because things get a little funky there if you pick up in that spot, I have found. And I'm going to pick up by bringing my needle under the leg that's closest to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches right there. Grab another needle. And now I'm gonna stop and look what I just did and go, does that look good? That's a basic question. Because if it doesn't, now is the time for me to stop, take those stitches out, and try again. But I'm very satisfied with this, so I'm ready to knit my next set of stitches. These are my quote unquote provisional stitches here. These are the loops of yarn. If you were doing a provisional cast on, like a crochet cast on, this is where you would take those stitches off and knit. But one thing with Judy's Magic cast on is I have the right number of loops right off the bat. And now I'm here at this edge, and I'm going to pick up stitches again. Now, what I'm going to do to pick up these next stitches is I'm going to turn my work around so that everything is oriented this way, because this is I knitted up this direction, and I want to make sure I'm seeing my actual stitches and I'm not looking at upside down stitches. So I'm going to pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. And there we go. We are now all picked up, and I'm going to check again, just see how that picked up edge looks. Is it going to be ugly? If it's ugly, can I fix it with duplicate stitch? These are the questions I'm going to ask myself now before I go any further, because now would be the easiest time for me to start over if I was dissatisfied. And overall, I am satisfied. Where's the top of my foot, the instep stitches, and where's the bottom of my foot, where my heel stitches would eventually be. And it's a choice. You can either make these stitches along this edge, this picked up edge, consider those your instep stitches, or you can consider your instep stitches along this edge. I'm gonna be honest, I think that this picked up edge looks a little bit funky. I'm gonna hide that under my foot. So I'm going to consider this here to be my instep stitches. Just see here a sock, right? Here's my band toe here at the top of my sock. This here, that means my joint in my round is to the left side of the top of my toe, all right? And that's how I'm gonna choose to work it. So if I were going to do any patterning like I did with that sock on the top of my toe, I would knit all the way around. I would knit around and I would start the patterning here on this needle number 4. So now that I have all this done, we're ready to start shaping the toe. How you go about increasing for your toe and doing your toe shaping and getting to the full circumference of the sock is very simple. Row 1 will be a plain row of knitting. Then row 2, you will increase 4 stitches evenly. And the really nice thing about this setup with DPNs, really nice, is you have very convenient markers on where those 4 stitches can be placed. So I will be doing an increase basically in each corner of the strip of fabric that I knitted. Now you can utilize any increase that you'd like. If you wanted to do a knit 1 front and back, that could give you a nice little decorative element to a more vanilla sock. That could actually be really interesting. Now I want to knit that. This toe shaping really lends itself to lifted increases because you have a plain round of knitting in between each increase round, or you can just do a make 1. For this sample, I'm going to go ahead and do a make 1 because I think that's a very common way to do increases for toe up socks. Okay, so with all that decided and figured out, let's start working this toe. Okay, here we are, and round 1 is a plain round of knitting. The reason I want to knit 1 plain round first before I do any increases is because I do plan to do make 1s. I want to have a really clear running thread to work into when I do those increases.
All right, right now I'm on needle number 2, and so these are the stitches that will be along the bottom of the foot. It's that first edge I did the pickups.
One nice thing too about this sock, by the way, is you really avoid holes at your toes that you have to like deal with later. So here I'm at my instep stitches, where if I were to start doing any type of pattern stitch that would go at my toe, this is where I would do it. Okay, that is one round complete, and now that I have one round complete, I'm gonna go ahead and do my increase round.
So I'm going to knit 6. And then here at the corner, I'm going to do a make one right. This is going to be the right side of the foot, and the toe will angle towards the right, so I want to do a right leaning increase. Now I'm going to knit 6. When I get to the end of this next needle, I will do my make one left. And that will mirror the make one right that I just did. I'm now halfway around the sock, and I'm going to repeat what I just did. So I'm going to knit my 6 across, then when I get to this corner, I'll do my make one right. And then I knit my last 6 across, and when I get to the last corner where the join is, I will do a make one left. And now my round is complete.
So at this point, I'm going to continue on in that pattern. I just did an increase round, so I'm going to go ahead and do a plain round of knitting. And at this point, I'm just going to follow the simple pattern of increasing 4 stitches evenly every other round. Okay, so I went ahead and I bound off where I was, because once you're into the increasing, everything is pretty straightforward with this toe at that point. So here it is finished. And you can see it has a nice shape there to the toe. If you like a toe that's more rounded and not so much a wedge that comes to a point, you might really like this type of toe shaping for a toe up sock. I really like the way that the increases to the sides like this are very discreet. You don't get those noticeable increase lines the way that you can with a wedge toe. And some of that just has to do with how they're spaced out. Now you're gonna see this, and that looks a little wonky right there. Totally granted. This wouldn't be as noticeable if the yarn were the same color. That's one thing. The yarn being different colors, you can really sort of see where maybe there's a little bit of wonkiness. But this is something that can totally be sorted out with a little bit of just a duplicate stitch. So I'm going to do that right now for you, just so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to cut myself off some more yarn here, just enough to do a little bit of duplicate stitch. And this is the sort of thing with sock knitting that's really handy to know how to do, because sock knitting, there's a lot of kind of changes in direction and a little bit of shaping, and sometimes things get little holes, you can get little gaps, and instead of sweating it, disguise it. Just disguise it with some duplicate stitch. It works great. It's a little wonky right there, so I'm going to just take my tapestry needle and I'm going to come up where that is and bring the yarn up, and I'm going to follow this through here. This is a little bit of a judgment call that I'm making, but I just want to sort of bring this in and close that up a little bit.
Got a little stuck there, but I'm going to pull the tail through here, and then I'm going to start kind of pulling at that to drag that little bit of yarn that's sticking out and looking a little funky to the back side of the toe. And then I kind of turn this toe inside out and I pull on that yarn to get to come to the back of the work.
And tidy that up. And then you look on this side, oh, I think that is looking really nice. And again, if this were all one color, you wouldn't even notice anything going on there. And then to finish that, I could just then weave in these tails and no one would ever notice that I'd done anything to make that corner just look a little bit better. And if you have any worries like, oh, but it looks a little wonky there, I'm gonna show you this toe again. Like, if you look at this toe, you don't notice any real wonkiness there. Whatever wonkiness there might have been with picking up stitches along that edge really gets disguised by the fact that you are working with the same color yarn. And you get that lovely kind of band detail along the front of the toe. And yeah, it's a very lovely, lovely beginning to a sock. So there it is, the band toe. I really do enjoy working this toe. It is a fun, quick start to a toe up project, and I love the fit of it. Like I said, I just feel like it gives me a little bit more room at the tip of my toe. I like a little freedom for my toes in my socks. And it is great if you're wanting to have a stitch pattern that runs the full length from right at the edge of the toe up the cuff. This is a really nice way to start your toe. The only downside to this toe really is the fact that you have to pick up stitches. That's kind of the only downside to it, in my opinion. But the nice thing about that even is it's such a few stitches, and if you're unhappy with what you've done, it's really easy to start over and you haven't lost a ton of time in that process. So what do you think? I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions you'd like to ask me, or if you have any tips or tricks of your own, because one of the great things about being in an online community is we all get a chance to learn from one another. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If so, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your other knitting friends, liking videos, sharing videos, commenting on videos. Yes, even commenting on videos helps YouTube know that this is a space worth checking out, and it's a really easy, free way to help support my channel. If you like other ways to support my channel, please make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Hitting the notification bell will let you know whenever I upload a new video or start a live stream. Down in the description box, just a reminder that you will find some additional information, including math formulas that I used, some basic directions on the toe shaping. All of that will be down in the description box for your reference if you want to try out this toe later. And I think that is it for today. So thank you so much again for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you may be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy crafting. Bye. So today I want to show you a great way to start a toe up. And the reason I chose the band toe for this. So now that you have a big picture view of the band toe, let's jump in and start working it. Working it, working it, we're gonna work it. Okay, I'm babbling. Babble, 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 babble.